and then I'll hit record. All right. And I'll send you the link too if you want to post it once I
I retweeted it.
Yeah. If that's all you want to do, dude, that's okay. It's all right. No pressure. I'll just send it to you. I'll just post it though.
Yeah. I'll probably post it after the fact.
Yeah.
I feel like it gets more stuff that way.
I'll send you the link too if you want to post it. There we go. All right, let me just post this and then I'll be able to, and we'll start. All right. All right, now hit record and we'll go. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. So today I have a Liberty Twitter superstar, Drew Hancock. Drew, thanks for being on the show, dude.
Yeah, I don't know about superstar, but I am a proud Lolbert. So
how about rising star? How about rising star?
Go.
All right.
I'm content with that.
So first questions, how would they build the roads? Just joking.
They wouldn't. I'm a libertarian specifically because
I was planning that joke and I wanted it to land better, but tell everyone, I guess, like what your beliefs are, because obviously I think a lot of people gravitate towards like the liberty side of things, and yeah.
Yeah. So I use the term libertarian. To be more specific, I am an anarcho-capitalist. So like I take it to the extreme. I don't think the government should exist at all. I still believe in private property rights. On the spectrum, so libertarianism, people say like it's not left or right. And I don't really agree with that per se. I think that there are left-wing libertarians and right-wing libertarians. I consider myself to be more right-wing. So I believe that, without government, things do result in hierarchy. And I do believe more in traditional values and things like that. Yeah, I think that's basically it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like the common thing people say was like, if a 13-year-old girl wants to sell herself on, in a libertarian world, how would that be okay? Right. I feel like that's one of those, like, who built the roads type questions, right?
Yeah. Those are the two questions that I would say most get levied at people, which, like the age of consent stuff, that gets thrown at everyone. I would say, so like, if you disagree with someone, people are going to say, oh, well, you're a pedophile, just because that's what people go to. But I feel like libertarians get that more than most people because of kind of our beliefs.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can talk about stuff like that, but yeah.
I would, tell me. So again, what would be like your response to something like that in your perfect world?
So it's not a perfect world. So like, even if we abolish the government, I will just say it's never going to be perfect. Like I'm
Absolutely.
Not sitting here and saying like, oh yeah, I know the answers to all the world's problems. So age of consent specifically is something that should be kept like as local as possible. So you look at it and you say like a 5-year-old and a 30-year-old, I think everyone pretty much agrees, I would hope so, that yeah, that's completely wrong. You get to a 10-year-old and a 25-year-old, again, like everyone's going to think that's wrong. You get to a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, I think most people are going to say that's wrong, less amount. A 19-year-old and a 15-year-old, I think that's kind of the line. I think most people would still say that's not fine, but you may have more people, and then 18 and 15. So stuff like this, it's something where it should be kept local as possible. Like if you're a kid's parents, you know your kid better than they do. There are some like 18-year-olds that I met that are still fucking stupid and like basically, sorry, can I use bad words?
Yeah, absolutely, okay. Dude. Yeah, absolutely.
So like I've met 18-year-olds who are so stupid and like they're basically still children. And then at the same time, I've met 18-year-olds who are fully functional adults. And there are arguments about that, about when do people become adults, because I don't think that there is like a set age, like, oh, you're not an adult at 17 and then you turn 18 and then magically you're an adult. I think that there is kind of a argument to be made there for autonomy and things like that. But yeah, as far as a 13-year-old with, whatever, personally, I don't think that a 13-year-old can consent. So I'm not one of those people. I think that it is kind of morally abhorrent. And I don't think that would be something that would just be accepted. So there is this view of libertarians that is also promoted by some libertarians, which is part of the problem, that we're all just, live and let live. Well, they're just two people. They just want to do whatever. Who are you? That's not my opinion at all. Part of free association and freedom is me being able to say like, no, that's fucking ridiculous. Ostracism, like, yeah, if I find out that my neighbor's next door is a 13-year-old dating a 20-year-old, I'm probably not going to talk to those people. Like, probably gonna want nothing to do with that, or if they're like parents who allow that to happen. But yeah, did that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I also saw you, like, I watched clips of you were like, I don't know, you were with that debate with his name Clint, I think,
Yeah,
right?
Clint
And like
and
the
Ace.
business, yeah. And I like follow, on Twitter. It's so much fun, but I was following like that, and that was like a real interesting. It was like one sticking to the core libertarian beliefs, and the other in a more like kind of, in my opinion, like drifting away. So where did you fall on that view? So for people listening, it was the debate: should government, mandating vaccines and private businesses staying, agreeing with that, right? You can explain better than me.
So DeSantis, he passed this thing. So he said that, hey, no government, like the federal government, if they pass a law saying that businesses have to ask for proof of vaccination, we're not going to honor that. We're not going to do that ourselves. And that I am completely on board with.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem using like state power in that way to curb other state power. But then the other part of that was that he was going to start fining businesses who did ask for proof of vaccination. And that is where I have the problem. So I think that businesses should be allowed to do on their property, of course. I don't think that they should be allowed to go around shooting people for no reason. But on their property, especially with discrimination, I think that businesses should be allowed to discriminate on whatever basis they want, whether it's they don't want to serve someone who's black, whether they don't want to serve someone because they're ugly, whatever reason they want. Proof of vaccination is no different than that. And if you look at a state like Florida, even consequentially, if there were any businesses asking for proof of vaccination, I think they would all go out of business pretty much. Like, I don't think it would have been a problem. Yeah, so that's all it is. I'm opposed to the vaccination mandates because I think that businesses should be allowed to make that decision for themselves, and that goes either direction.
Yeah, so it's like such a tough, because like with the government mandating and them agreeing with it, it puts you like in that weird area of like, is it their choice or not their choice? But it was real interesting. Like, it really made me think, like, it's just like you said, there's no perfect system, but it's just hard to, it's like if you're going by the book or now you're making concessions and certain rules. I don't know. It was a real interesting, if you had to like pick one. So, I mean, I usually associate like the beginning of America as a pretty libertarian time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like with the Declaration of Independence and stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think that's probably the most successful country that has lived by that kind of private personal rights? Do you think that was like the most successful time?
Probably. People also use, and these are examples that I haven't read about, so I can't really speak on them, but people also reference medieval Iceland and Ireland, which, those are historic examples. No, I'll just say people say that. I don't know anything about them, so there are other people to ask about that. People also reference the Wild West, and that is something that I have listened to lectures about. That's still not something that I have read about, so I'm not really qualified to speak about it. But yeah, America, specifically its founding, I would say is probably the most libertarian society ever.
Because my like thing, like I said, I was like more really like libertarian. I even have a libertarian flag, and we talked about morality. It seemed like back then it might have been easier because everyone was a Christian, and even if the founding fathers weren't Christians, they were whatever they were called.
Yeah, I think they were like deists.
Yeah, right. But it seemed like that's why there's so many insane people in the world, and that's why I would do this example like the shopping cart. Like there's people put the shopping carts away. Like, that's why libertarian in my mind would, because people are assholes, like without a overwatch of some morality or rules, it feels like it would fall into chaos. What would you like say to like that kind of response?
Yeah, so I completely agree. I am completely anti-democracy. I am completely against the average person having any say over anything. Like I said, I'm a right-wing person. Where my issue is and why I'd rather have no government is because whenever you create a government where people elect representatives or whatever else, you're basically creating a system where other people who are stupid and don't know anything about me then have a claim to make rules about how I should live. and that's why I am anti-government. And there is like a libertarian argument that comes from Hans Hermann Hoppe about how monarchy would be superior to democracy for
Nice.
other reasons than that. But yeah, I'm completely against.
I don't know.
I don't like democracy.
I agree with you 100%. It's fun. Who said that? What was his name?
Hans Hermann Hoppe. He's a German guy. Yeah.
Because there's this book I read. I can't tell the full. It's called Freemasons Behind the Revolution and another group, but I'm not going to say it on a podcast. But basically, though, it goes through how all the revolutions in Europe and in the West and in our revolution were all done by Freemasons, which is true. Our founding fathers were all Freemasons, and they did this like the French Revolution. Thomas Paine was there, and all these people were doing it because they needed to remove the monarchy and the church, which gave the best representation of the populace. And I thought that was a really interesting. That's why I never heard that before so I'll have to look up that guy. But that got me thinking, they, these groups, these secret, they've never done anything for our benefit ever.
Yeah.
So if they were always, and they would openly admit, we were behind the Bolshevik Revolution and all these revolutions. Why? And that's almost what started me thinking that the liberty, though it is amazing, is not, it's something that they can just then take away or something. I don't know the best poetic way to say that.
Yeah, I mean, there is an argument that I do sympathize with, that had the Tsar taken out the Bolsheviks before the Bolshevik Revolution happened, we wouldn't have had communism. And that's something that I agree, sympathize with and understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Freemason stuff, I don't really know anything about all of that. But
it's just an interesting viewpoint. That's it just got me thinking is there more to this than to people, and we do it to people too, you're not really free. You're not free. So now we're going to take it. That's why we're taking out your government, because you're not really free. You have a dictator or whatever. But
yeah. So what type of libertarian were you? Were you an ANCAP or just a Gary Johnson libertarian or
So I learned about, I had I'm sure Sal the agorist. I had him on, and then I had Joshua from Our Foundations. Do you know Josh?
I do not.
He's a really smart guy, but he's an agorist as well. And I love that idea, trading and doing, being the best self-sustaining person you can be. But beyond that, I just hate the government and police. So I just fell into that group. Yeah. Why do you ask that?
I'm just curious. So with the agorism, I like counter economics, black market activity and stuff like that. I don't think that it's really useful I don't think you're going to take out the state through agorism. So I guess that's where I disagree with the agorists. But yeah. So what's your ideal government now? So you're not a libertarian, but.
Dude, I'm going to get hammered I think that you had a nationalistic, and I use this word, it's such a fascism, a nationalistic moral, with the church, like a monarchy with a divine king and a powerful church, that would look after its own people. I would even say this, I would even stop conspiracies. I would stop all of it. I would just do what I was told. If I knew it was creating a land that was going to be better to my children, I would give up, but I know that's not the direction we're going. I don't know what you call what we have today, but yeah. What do you think about that? Do you think that do you see some positives from that kind of government? Or
so the thing with that, so as an ANCAP, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't get, whenever you have private property rights, you can run whatever your private property is however you want. So hypothetically, there could be a communist society in anarcho-capitalism. Just people buy up a whole bunch of land, they start a commune there. So something like that, if you wanted to buy up a bunch of land and have something like that, I would totally support it. My only thing with states, and I think what differentiates just that from a government, is claiming land that I don't. Well, this kind of gets into autistic libertarian territory.
I love it.
But it's basically claiming land that you don't own. So the government now, they claim all of this land that they've never used. It's just in the middle of nowhere. They have no right to it, and they're still going to enforce rules on there. but yeah, if it's, you guys buying up a bunch of land and just starting your own society, then I think that's totally fine. I have no problem. Like, that is my worldview. I think that people should be able to live however they want. For me, that would be unbridled capitalism. For other people, that would be socialism. And I think that that wouldn't work out very well. And I think eventually they would, come over to everyone else.
Yeah.
But knock yourselves out. Like, whatever, I don't care.
How do you answer? So the capital, like, I now feel like capitalism is just the other wing of the same bird of communism. Like, just like how we talked about the Bolshevik Revolution, how the Rockefellers and the Harrimans, they funded the Bolshevik Revolution, they funded Hitler. And so what, like, do you think that or you think that's totally off? Or, because that's my fear, is like, or not fear, but my complaint with a total anarcho-capitalist society is that these people, they need us on the spectrum, because wherever they are, the people at the top are going to control it. So they need a boogeyman for us, the US. So they say it's communism, but really they control both ends of it. They control the capitalistic side. They were keeping the Bolsheviks alive with donations because they were broke. And so that's why I feel like that it's like a scam, that we've been lied to, that capitalism isn't the winner. They control that system. They also control communism. That's why they propped it up. What would you like? I don't know if I'm asking like a good question, but
No,
do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so. So yeah, it's one of these things where libertarians kind of get caught because we'll defend capitalism and we'll be like, oh, look at all the wealth that the US has. And then in the next hand, we'll talk about how awful it is and how it shouldn't exist at all. So people kind of call us on that. And so basically, yeah, what we have in the United States today is corrupted capitalism. It's not my ideal. It's corporations in bed with the government. I completely agree with that. On a consequentialist ground, like, it still leads to insane amount of wealth. Like, we are in the wealthiest society ever, but there are problems that go along with that. You have weapons companies in bed with the government. I talked in one of my videos about war about how I think it was Rockefeller who helped fund World War I. He was like funding all sides in that.
Yeah.
Well, the British, and that's why the United States entered it on their side. So I think whenever you look at it, you see, well, capitalism brings about all this innovation. Capitalism is why we are as wealthy as we are now. And then they get involved with the government and everything gets fucked up. And it's kind of like the opposite of what liberals say. So liberals say, well, corporations are in bed with the government, so that's why we need to expand the government. So, which doesn't make any sense, because if corporations are controlling the government and so my thing is, well, corporations are controlling the government, let's get rid of the government. And then there's not this power structure for them to exert unfair advantages on other people. So like, you look at things like regulatory capture, it's all corporations trying to give themselves unfair advantages in the market. But yeah, and I mean,
go ahead. No, I was going to ask you another, so continue your thought.
No, and I mean, even with the corrupted system we have today, we still have enough of a market where there is competition. So you see big companies go under, not all the time, but it is completely possible. So like these big tech companies right now that have a monopoly, I think 10, 15 years from now, you are going to see sites like Locals, Odyssey, which is actually, I don't know if you know this, actually where I work.
No way. You work at Odyssey?
I work at Odyssey.
Well, thank you I'm waiting until I hit 300 subscribers till I
talk to me after that.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, so you see these other companies come up, and eventually they're not going to have Twitter, Facebook, all these sites aren't going to have a monopoly. And I mean, you look at Amazon, look at who they took out. Walmart was like this big devil that everyone demonized forever. Amazon came along and they took all of Walmart's market share. Now Jeff Bezos is the richest guy in the world, and now Amazon is the evil corporation, because once you get to the top, then you start doing the lobbying and all of this stuff. Right. But eventually someone will take them out too. So what was your...
my question was, what would happen in an anarcho-capitalist society where now you have no regulations and it's hard to think back if we all started from zero, but say we change like tomorrow. I mean, Amazon has so much wealth, so much power. Couldn't they just enslave us all, buy everything? You'd be living in an Amazon pod, renting a toothbrush. I
mean, so do you know Michael Malice?
Yeah, I've seen his book. I haven't read it though yet.
Which book?
Did he release a new one just recently?
Yeah, he released the Anarchist Handbook, which is just like a compilation of other people's stuff. I highly recommend his book called The New Right. Okay. So if anyone watching this wants to buy that, that's a good one. So basically, say Amazon, like they bought up everything in the United States, and now all of a sudden Amazon is our ruler. That's basically the same thing we have now. So I think it would be a wash.
That's true. Yeah.
But I don't think that that is possible. So you look at the United States, you look at how they're $30 trillion in debt. It's completely unsustainable outside of a government. These things cost money for private companies to do. I don't think that a private company, I don't know how much Amazon is valued with. They don't have enough money, enough resources to take over an entire country or the entire world, no matter how much they have. And you see a lot of their wealth comes from being propped up by the government, at least the size that they are today. So there's that. And whenever you have a free market, things tend to decentralize. So there may be like a big concentration especially when you take out things like patents. So whenever someone first comes out with something, there may be like, they have this monopoly on it. Pretty soon, everyone else figures out they lose most of their power. Whenever Amazon, all of their wealth comes from people enjoying their products and services. If they all of a sudden started invading places in the world, I think that they would lose a lot of that. And there's not really anything from stopping them doing that now. Like Amazon, I don't see why they couldn't go to Africa and like a very small country and just like invade with their own Amazon military force. I don't think that you need to abolish the government for that to happen. I think that a United States with no government would probably be a superior force in, say, like Haiti. So I think that Amazon, if that is something they're interested in, don't wait until we abolish the government. Go there right now and take them over. Like you go.
Well, I guess, and we've seen that already, right? With like the United Fruit Company in Guatemala. I guess they didn't, but they had the U.S. government invade for them. But then who was the East India Company? I mean, they had their own military, and but yeah, they.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like, did you ever play the video game Borderlands?
No, I haven't.
And that, so there's this planet Pandora. I'm getting like really nerdy and like fulfilling the autistic libertarian stereotype.
I'll have to check that out. Borderlands.
Yeah. So like, there's this planet, and it's all just ruled by evil corporations, and they all have like their own private armies and stuff. So it kind of relates to this.
Yeah, but, totally.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that really would just be a logistical thing. I also don't think that they would have the incentive, because if they can dominate through the market through peaceful means, I think that that would be preferable to them. I think that would be preferable to everyone. You have to remember that they would have to hire like military forces who would be willing to do this, which without decades of government propaganda, like I saw that you're reading John Taylor Gatto.
Yeah.
Unless there's like an Amazon school that starts to raise children, then about how awesome Amazon is and how you should fight and die for Amazon and be an obedient worker, then I don't see anyone being willing to do that for Amazon.
Yeah.
And say like Amazon did get together and they're like, we're going to start launching drone strikes on other companies. Then you have a whole bunch of other companies that are like, Amazon, we're not going to stand for this.
Good point. Yeah. That's absolutely a good point. I'm trying to think like what, how, because I don't know if you know this. Did Rockefeller get kickbacks from the government? Do you know if he did or not?
I'm sure he did. I don't know for sure though.
I kept trying to find that, because that was my one argument one time with somebody, was like, because you can definitely make the argument Tesla and Amazon are propped up by the government, but before, when the Rockefeller and the Harriman family, I was trying to he would do unsavory business practices, like buying up land on the train tracks so they couldn't put a train there and things. But I couldn't find out if he got capitalism. And the whole point I was asking that was like, so before we had serious government kickbacks, was it still possible for someone to create a monopoly that couldn't be stopped? And that was the argument I was trying to make, that it did happen, with his, because he was just dominated and bought everyone else out of business. I don't know where I'm really going.
So I mean, so with that, so with this natural monopoly thing, so that kind of goes back to the patent thing. So like someone comes out with a great product, other people are going to copy it. People are going to figure out ways to do it better and cheaper. There's also, once a corporation gets very large, it starts to resemble like a bureaucratic government where it's very hard to coordinate. So people talk about the economic calculation problem. That also applies to very large companies, because whenever you have this
economic calculation problem.
So Mises wrote Ludwig von Mises, the Austrian economist. He wrote it about socialism, saying that without a price system, calculation is pretty much impossible in a socialist society. So like you have scarce resources, price system allocates those. So whenever you see things like shortages in toilet paper last year, whenever there's not the government involved fixing the prices, you see prices rise, and then that prevents shortages, and then the prices rising, that signals to toilet paper manufacturers like, hey, we need to make more toilet paper. And so without that system in communism, you have shortages, and that's basically the whole point of it. That also applies to large corporations. You have things within the company that can't be calculated. So large bureaucratic corporations are very inefficient whenever they make changes. So there's that advantage that a smaller company has over them. With communication between the top level and the bottom level. And then you see, so all of the monopolies that, or hang on, let me make this point. There are local monopolies. So, say like, there's a gas station and it's the only gas station in town and they can charge $4 per gallon.
Right.
So there's stuff like that. People can start a competing gas station, just undercut them and say, hey, we're going to sell $3.50. People can go to the next store. I'm sure that Amazon, maybe they'll make it so that you can buy gasoline on Amazon. So even in things like local monopolies, you have ways of getting around it. But yeah, I think I covered everything there.
So when do you think so do you think that maybe in the beginning of our country, it was pretty close to like a perfect, what's your feelings on right around after the revolution, even I guess before the revolution?
So after the revolution, whenever they had the Articles of Confederation, like around that time before the Constitution. So I don't know enough about the Articles of Confederation themselves. Like I learned in school, like everyone else did, about how they were awful and terrible, and that's why we needed the Constitution. I don't agree with that view, because I think that if that was true, they wouldn't have gotten rid of the Articles of Confederation. I think that they complain
to live by.
Yeah. They complain about how like, oh, the central government wasn't strong enough. And it's like, well, it sounds like the Articles of Confederation were doing their job then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, right. That term sounds like it was a pretty small government system. It sounds like it was basically a confederacy, which, long live the South.
I agree. So that was going to be, so who do you think, when did this change start to happen? Do you think there was one president that caused it? Or do you have any feelings like when this kind of downturn that started the slippery slope that we're on today, that's just pure
So I mean, people like Ron Paul is very famous for saying we need to get back to the Constitution, and constitutional government compared to what we have today would be amazing, like very small government compared to now. At the time though, the Constitution was a big government document, so it was all of these intellectuals coming together and saying, hey, we need a stronger central government, let's get rid of this Articles of Confederation and kind of consolidate power.
Interesting. Right.
So really, that was it. I mean, that's why it was the Federalists who wanted the Constitution against the Anti-Federalists. So the people like Jefferson.
I don't think anyone's ever explained it to me like that. Nice. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see other things. I would say World War I is probably like, let me back up. The Civil War. So the South trying to secede, and Lincoln, the war of northern aggression, as some of us call it.
I agree.
So Lincoln basically saying, no, you can't do that. And then starting to censor journalists and stuff. Like I tweeted out that my favorite thing about Abraham Lincoln is his ability to catch a bullet. So there's that. And then World War I, because that was the thing that made the United States an imperial power, that gave rise to the Bolsheviks, and that then led to World War II, the Cold War, all this sort of stuff afterwards.
Right. I think, and that's another point that I'll send you the book too. Well, first, do you ever read Don Jeffries? Do you know who Don Jeffries is? He's on Twitter. He wrote a book though about Lincoln. That was the first I learned how he was such a tyrant. But what I was saying was that book about how the Freemasons behind the revolution, it was just basically like, according to this guy, it was a strategic war trying to knock out like the nationalism and the monarchies that were, because you had the Kaiser in Germany and all those, and that was really what the war was about. Was that?
Well, Wilson explicitly said that, like, we were trying to make the world a safer place for democracy.
I didn't. That's odd. Yeah.
And Hans Hermann Hoppe, he actually talks about that in his book Democracy: The God That Failed.
I gotta check this guy out.
The same one where he says that, where he makes the case of monarchy is preferable to democracy. He mentions that World War I was a war to spread democracy all over and to end monarchy, and that's why it's a big inflection point. But
Interesting. I gotta check this guy out, dude. Hans
Yeah,
Habermas.
no, listen, a lot of the like right wing people, they really like the nationalist right wing people, like the Nick Fuentes types, like they
Yeah.
have a lot of respect for Hoppe. And a lot of people, they are libertarians, and then they start to read Hoppe, and then from Hoppe they then go to more of the right wing stuff. Not always, but sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was like my trajectory, even though I didn't read him yet. That's like where so like how do we're in a shit situation now, obviously. Where do we like, I heard you said earlier about how agorism wouldn't be able to stop the state. And I'm sure you're right. But what do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think what's your, like, what could people even do?
Yeah. So listen, so agorism, I don't think that it's a solution. I think that it's still great though. Like, I do illegal stuff all the time. If we're being honest, I'm not going to say what. If you want to do that, like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I think the like number one thing that people can do is if you live in a blue state, move to a red state. I think that is the simplest thing. If you're in commie California, move somewhere else. So yeah, that's one thing. I do really agree with, you have these people like Matt Erickson. I don't know if you know, I'm talking about how personal wealth building and stuff like that. And hey, just focus on yourself, focus on becoming wealthy in your best self so that you don't have to rely on other people. I completely agree with that as well. New Hampshire, I don't know if you're familiar with the Free State Project. So Jeremy Kauffman is a big proponent of this. He's my boss for Odyssey.
No, was he just on Ethan Ralph's show?
I don't know if he was on Ethan Ralph. I don't pay attention to Ethan Ralph, but he was on Tim Pool's show.
Okay. All right.
But
yeah, the one CEO of Odyssey was on Ethan. He's had like a 24-hour stream, and the guy stopped in, but I can't remember if it was him or not. Sorry to interrupt you.
But yeah, so he is part of this Free State Project, which is all libertarians moving to New Hampshire and basically trying to take the state over. And like, you see it now already. The Republicans in that state are super libertarian. They get a lot of stuff. They have like the most guns per capita.
Wow.
So that's a strategy that I really agree with, because there's not enough libertarians in the country to make a difference in the country at large. But if you all concentrate in this state, New Hampshire, that only has 1 million people, there's more than enough libertarians to make that a libertarian state. So that, in terms of practicality, I think is like the best strategy.
That's an awesome idea, dude. You're right. And isn't the Pork Fest or whatever in New Hampshire?
Usually? And that is a so that's sponsored by the Free State Project, and that, I think their underlying goal is to have people just fly out to New Hampshire and see like how awesome it is, and hope never stay. Yeah.
I just am like thinking of, how about immigration? I think that's like, I had to stop following the Libertarian Twitter party. I don't know what, like the big one, because they're the one that supported Joe Jorgensen, because it was like driving me nuts. So what's in an anarcho-capitalist world, how do you handle immigration?
So in an anarcho-capitalist world, it's pretty simple. It's private property borders. So say like, you have your house, you can tell whoever you want to, no, you can't come in here. Mm-hmm. Say you have an entire community, like, you and all of your neighbors, you have this like gated community or whatever, you can say, no, you're not allowed in here. And likewise, if you are someone who would welcome immigrants, which I'm not sure if there is anyone who would welcome immigrants, then you can say, yeah, come on into my house or come on into our neighborhood.
But is there still would there still be borders in that scenario? Like, say it's the same lines drawn up as we have today with Mexico and the US. Like, say, does that make sense?
Yeah. So your border would be, your property line. So like, this is the land that I own. People who I want on here can come here. People who I don't want, same thing, can't.
Okay.
And that would be true for everyone who owns property. And, it wouldn't just be like homeowners. It would be like apartment complexes. Like, hey, this is our land. We don't want to lease to immigrants, or we do want to lease to immigrants. Mm-hmm. Say you have a town where you have all of these businesses, maybe they're arranged, like they all have agreements with one another, and they say, yeah, we will allow immigrants or we won't. So it really just does come down to private property rights. So I think that an anarcho-capitalist society in that sense would have stricter borders than now, because now you have like this forced integration type thing, where now people have to serve immigrants, which I think is completely wrong.
Right.
But yeah.
Because that's not like a thing I struggle, like I couldn't, but I like that idea of communities. But you're saying, so there wouldn't even be I know we're talking hypotheticals, but like it wouldn't be in Mexico and the United States. It'd be communities of people who own land, and right or no?
So I think that like the governments of the United States and Mexico wouldn't exist. Like there wouldn't be a hard line drawn, like this is the separation. But I still think that, cultures would persist, and like the United States would still stay, like Texas would still be Texas and Mexico would still be Mexico.
Okay.
It's like how there's open borders between states now, but you still look like California has a very different culture than say Arizona, even within California. So like Los Angeles has a very different culture than like other parts of California.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Here in Missouri, St. Louis has a completely different culture than where I live in Missouri. So you would still have like regional differences and things like that. Like sports teams are another example. So you have kind of this team's territory here, and then it kind of crosses, and then you have this team's territory over here, but there's no hard line. But you still, like, as you drive through states, you start to see hats change.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Metaphor.
Yeah. And I actually did a video about this. Like, I love the United States. There is no place that I would rather live. I love patriotism. People who burn flags and stuff, I think, are insanely stupid. So just because I don't like the American government doesn't mean that I don't like the concept of America or I don't care about America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's an important distinction for sure. It's just hard. Like, it's such a, because we're clearly, whatever we're doing right now is just complete shit. Like it is. And I think it's probably by plan or by design, but I feel like everybody, especially this past year, has now been looking out for what else is out there, because we see the total utter chaos that we are in right now. And it is, like I think you said, it's a house of cards. Like the debt that we're in, like I don't see how we get out of this. Something has to give. I just don't know what that is or what's going to happen. But
yeah, so I think that's where it kind of comes into where you want to make sure that you're living in the right place. So if you're in California, whenever the collapse comes, you don't want to be in California. And that's where I think it would be good to come into New Hampshire. Like, hey, the collapse comes, there's no more government. Oh, I live in the most libertarian place in the country. I think I'll be fine. So yeah, I think.
You see what do you think happens to the United States? Do you see it breaking into like a balkanizing, or do you think because I know that like Zero Hedge, I'm sure you follow, I've talked about the imminent collapse for so long. Now I almost feel like it's Boy Who Cried Wolf. But what do you think happens to the United States? Because I just can't see how, I can't see it sustaining itself. Like it eventually, right? I mean, there's no way it doesn't. But what do you think happens to the United States?
What I think happens, I don't really know. Yeah, eventually they're going to have to default on the debt, and it's going to be bad. My hope is that there's secession, so you see a split. People were talking earlier about like, let's give California to Canada and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I am all in favor of secession. I hope that the United States splits up into 2 or 3 or 4 or 50, like however much it wants to.
Yeah.
So that would be my hope. I think if the government just straight up collapsed, I don't think it would be chaos, but I do think you would see the different sides like scramble to form their own government, like each their own side. People talk about that like collapsitarianism. I don't think it would be a good thing if the government collapsed. I don't think it would be like the worst thing ever.
What's that, collapsitarianism? What's that mean?
It's basically like people who want the government to collapse.
Okay.
A collapse would be like a good thing.
All right.
I don't really agree with that, but I don't think it would be like the worst thing in the world. I think that you would see people rearrange and form governments just into smaller units. Like, I don't think if the government collapsed, you're going to be able to form a new federal government over the entire United States. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe move to Alaska, because like if you're in Alaska, I don't know what they're going to do back at the mainland, move to Hawaii or something like.
All right, dude. You ever watch those Alaska shows? Those people are they're true libertarians, dude. They live off the land. They want to build a house. There's no regulation. You just build a house. It's up to you to not have it collapse on you.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about like the really nerdy stuff is seasteading, and you have like these ANCAPs who want to go out to the ocean and like build like BioShock cities.
Damn, dude. Now that's an idea.
Yeah. I don't know the logistics of that, but people have the idea. I don't know. Maybe we just have to wait until we go to Mars.
Yes. Or if you get enough plastic in the ocean, you might be able to build like an island and then put dirt on it.
We need more pollution. Yeah. We need to throw as much plastic in as we can.
I'm going to start doing my part now. Absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah. I'm trying to think so in like, and drugs are I think, the drug war has obviously been and I was a heroin addict. So I used to really, I think that's what
Damn.
pushed me into libertarianism, was because I was like, people drink alcohol. I just decided to shoot dope.
Shoot
So
up.
what's the difference? But like I do, the drug war is idiotic. But I guess now like look is, I mean, have you ever been to, or you've seen like the videos of LA or Kensington is in Philadelphia? I mean, it's zombie lands. Do you think that those kind of issues would be alleviated with?
Yes.
No, you do? So you think that they would?
So degeneracy, this is another thing that Hoppe talks about. He defines,
man, I'm gonna love this guy, dude.
And I'm not even a Hoppian, by the way. It just relates to all of this. So he defines degeneracy as lifestyles that are unsustainable without the government.
Okay.
So you look at things like drug addiction. You look at things like, oh, I'm a single mom with 18 kids. Stuff like this that I think is only sustainable because the government exists, because these people can live off of the state. So there actually is an argument to be made there that, hey, a society without the government supporting these people would actually be more socially conservative, because these people, they have no choice but to get their shit together and actually do something.
Yeah.
And as far as like the heroin stuff, there's a lot of libertarians that are annoying about this. Like, I don't think that it should be illegal, but I'm not just going to be like, oh, well, it's your choice to do heroin if you want to do heroin. Like, no, I'm going to say that's stupid and that you shouldn't do heroin.
Right.
But so good on you for getting clean.
Oh, thank you, dude. Yeah. But dude, I'm going to love this guy. Cause you're right. I never thought about that. Like, you're right. All of these behaviors would not be sustainable if our taxes didn't, pay for it. And that's another thing. I also I hated taxes, and I still don't agree with taxes, but like if they went to something that actually helped the people, whether it was like to build railways or whatever, it actually helped people, I wouldn't mind paying all that we pay in taxes. And that's why I think I also fell away kind of from because I don't believe that a person at, a fast food job working 40 hours shouldn't be able to, live such a poor life. And I don't mind giving money that would support them so they could. And that's where I guess I also struggled with libertarian with no taxes, because there are people that are just they're not that they're not hardworking, but they're just I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, the fact that you feel that way is evidence of why you don't need the government to force you to do it. And I think if you live in a private community and stuff, and they say, hey, to live here, you got to pay, 10% of your income every year, then you can either do that or not live there. I have no problem with that. And whenever you live in a more private community that is choice, then you can keep track of hey, where is this going? Or else, you know what, I'm going to stop paying you. Whereas with the government, you don't really have a choice in that. And your money goes to wars overseas and drug addicts and all sorts of bad stuff.
And just to give credence to your point, the John Taylor Gatto's book was talking about in Massachusetts, they had the Anglican, people from, I forget where, somewhere in England, and they lived very individualistic. They, it was for yourself, you created for yourself. And then the neighboring community was from Ireland or somewhere else, and they were more community farming, and they hated each other. But gradually after 100 years, they took the best of both worlds, and they were able to overcome they picked the best of both worlds. And so he just said that to juxtaposition, how today they force these groups together that have not, or couldn't be farther apart, could never. And that's where our issues stem from, is forcing these people that hate each other, that have no similar views, into living in the same rules and same world.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why that's the whole culture war, because you have these weird left-wing losers with blue hair who think that misgendering someone is violence or whatever,
right?
And then you have your normal people who they just want a wife and they want to have 2 kids and live in a house with a picket fence,
right?
There's no way for these 2 groups of people to see eye to eye. And with the government, with the ability to pass laws against the other people, both sides really don't have a choice except to try to fight for the power of the government, because if they don't, the other group is going to, and then they're going to be subjugated. So that's why I advocate secession. Hey, you guys go do your blue hair college microaggression stuff over there. Everyone else does this over here.
Yeah, no, that definitely sounds better than, and that's, I don't think we've ever been maybe we've been divided at the Civil War, but it is insane. I don't see how you overcome this or come back to just agree on something, because there isn't, it's
Yeah.
like the middle ground is gone. There's no, it's like loony world and a semblance of what you expected your, well, I don't know how old you are, but like 30s to be when you were an adult. So, it doesn't look anything like I thought when I was 10 years old.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm only 21. So like,
Oh, damn, you're way younger, dude. Nice.
yeah. So, yeah, whenever I was a kid, it was like conservatives were doing all this like 9/11 war propaganda stuff, and they were censoring like the radio. Like I'm a big fan of Opie and Anthony and stuff. And,
Okay.
but then for the most part, the past 10 years or whatever it's been, the left, really since Obama, the left has been just awful and horrible. So yeah, so like my entire experience has been the left, the right is, they're
That must be
better.
hard for like, because you're 21. Like it seems like the younger generation. I mean, I guess the spectrum always keeps moving to the left, but that, like, do you like your friends? Do they feel the same way as you do, or when did you gather your beliefs? I guess when did you start believing like in a more pro-liberty ideals?
Whenever I was 13. So my dad was a big Ron Paul supporter, and
Awesome.
That would have been in 2011. So I still would have been 11. I was born in 2000. And then a couple years later, I was like, man, I'm getting pretty old. I'm 13, so I better learn about politics. And I just started looking up like Ron Paul speeches, and then it all kind of cavalcaded from there. And my dad gave me his copy of Liberty Defined, which is Ron Paul's book.
Okay.
But my best friend is actually like a hardcore right-wing guy, and like he doesn't like certain groups of people who are known to rule lots of things in the world and stuff. Which is not something that I'm into, but still, like, so yeah, I think that you do see something. So like the boomers, they were all left wing, like anti-war, all that sort of stuff. And then Gen X is more right wing, and then the millennials, of course, are more left wing. And then I think my generation is going to be more right wing. I think it's kind of cyclical in that way.
Yeah, I'm like a millennial, but that's that guy that I said, Joshua from Our Foundations. He has this, I think he had this one, but this theory was that, like you said, it's like the next generation. I think he goes like merchants. I don't know. There's like 6 of them, but it does that where it's like you have a one class and that creates this. So they do it kind of like that stupid saying that boomers love to post, hard times make easy men, or easy men make hard times. And you ever see that meme? It's like, yeah.
I mean, I think there is something to that, because you look at all the wealth after World War II, they came out of the Great Depression and all of that stuff. And then, you have the boomer generation, they grew up and they get all of these handouts and stuff handed to them. And sure enough, they're lefty degenerates. And then you have a bunch of Gen Xers being raised by, terrible boomer parents. And then they grew up to be more right wing.
Yeah.
And then because they're right wing and they're like actually good at raising families and stuff like that, then their kids again are kind of spoiled, and you have the millennials being a left wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's interesting. So like I don't have a child yet, but we will soon. I was thinking like, so it's interesting that your dad was a libertarian and you didn't rebel against that mindset. You joined it.
Well, so I did, like, I don't agree with my dad on everything. Like he's still a constitutionalist, and I take it farther than that. But like, yeah, I guess I'm different in that way. I don't know. My dad is like the smartest person I know. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's reassuring, because I've because it's so easy to get brainwashed. Like if you just pay attention a little bit, like my fiance, she doesn't really watch, but I've got the brainwashing out. But it is like when I barely pay attention, you think, oh, that seems right. Like, yeah, you should allow people with mental illness in the military, or I'm using that, you understand. And so I fought for that. And then I was like, you watch more, you're like, wait, why am I feeling this way? I don't agree with that. But it's so powerful that they can move generations and move all these groups. I don't know where I was going with that, but
no, but I mean, listen, you have everyone. It's like, this is so weird. All of the news networks, all of Hollywood, all of academia are all telling me the same narrative that, white people are the worst people ever. And like all of this sort of stuff. That we need socialism and big government. And it's like, maybe there's more to it than I think. And then you realize that, it's all of these people coming together to try to influence popular culture and turn it towards this big government, New World Order type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And that's so again, like I like see it as that spectrum of like capitalism, but like socialism, people don't understand like this. Literally the elites of Wall Street has funded all these things to create socialistic governments because they wanted to be the sole provider of natural resources and control them. And it's just wild how like Amazon posts his Pride Month and you think that you're taking the same side as Amazon on anything. You're on the wrong side, dude. You are on the wrong. You're everything that you say you're fighting against.
Yeah. And whenever they do stuff like that, like I think obviously Amazon, they don't care about gay rights or whatever, or Black Lives Matter. They're just saying whatever they need to get the people that they want to do the things that they want. So yeah, they'll say whatever they need to get in power. That's why, McDonald's in Saudi Arabia isn't going to put up LGBT stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, so I mean, it's not even like people talk about like this anti-white agenda, and I kind of mentioned that. I don't think it's even that. I think it's just they say whatever they need to get what they want done, and kind of this push for progressivism has kind of gone in that direction of like anti your nuclear family, pro LGBT, pro woman, all of this sort of stuff.
So you think it's not as nefarious? It's more like
I think it is nefarious. I think it is nefarious. I think that their goal is more power, and they're just willing to say whatever they need to get that.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't think they really have anything they're after except power. So whenever they say like, hey, pro Black Lives Matter, it's just that they're saying that because they need to.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know where that's like, I came into conspiracy, like not that I'm not a conspiracy theorist now, but you can see it's just like, it's not, maybe it isn't this as controlled as well as like a lot of people, by reptiles and things like that. It could just be like, people are just so greedy and morally bankrupt that they just want to accumulate as much power as humanly possible and inflict it on lesser powerful people. I don't know. I don't know.
And I mean, I've said this before. If everything was run by lizard people, would things be any different? Like,
yeah, that's a good point, dude. You're absolutely right. Yeah. It's terrifying. And I don't know that like I love that idea because I hate to be super black pilled, but I love what you said about how moving into because I always say like, you got to find a community and people that you're friends with and share, and don't start a militia. Do not do that. But you have to find like-minded people that's really awesome. I didn't know they were doing that in like New Hampshire to try and get more and more people there. That's like,
yeah, it's great. Yeah, this dude, Jason Sorens, wrote an essay like almost 20 years ago. I think it was in like 2004, talking about like, hey, everything that libertarians have tried to do to make this happen, it isn't working. Like, it's all been complete failures. And he basically lays out the argument for this Free State Project. And then they had a big debate on what state to do. New Hampshire won. And I think not too long ago, sometime this past decade, they actually started to do it. And all of these libertarians started to move to New Hampshire. And part of it, why they did that, their state motto is live free or die. So like it already was like kind of a libertarian state to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you have all of these libertarians and they're doing a lot. Like, I don't know the ins and outs. I don't live in New Hampshire. If I was going to move, I would move to New Hampshire. And they make a very compelling argument.
So
it's awesome.
Go ahead. My last question, what is the difference between, so Dave Smith, the Mises Caucus, what is the difference between the Libertarian group versus the Mises Caucus? Is that how you say it? Yeah.
So the Mises Caucus, they believe that the Libertarian Party should be principled and that it should focus on Austrian issues. So Austrian economic issues. So things like the Federal Reserve, things like the war, stuff like that. Whereas the Libertarian Party, they agree with those things, but for whatever reason, they want to focus more on like open borders and, gay rights and stuff like this. The Mises Caucus just says like, hey, let's be principled. Let's focus on the biggest issues of our day. Let's focus on things like lockdowns, now that that's come about in COVID measures. And then the Libertarian Party, they also aren't principled at all. So you have people like Gary Johnson who don't know anything, being the presidential nominee. You have people like Joe Jorgensen saying we must be actively anti-racist.
Yes, that was what made me unfollow. Yeah. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, which was completely terrible. Not that I'm against racism. Like, I don't think that you should be racist, but we must be actively anti-racist. So you're saying me who, I'm just sitting in my room, I don't hate any minorities. That's not enough. I need to actively go out and say like, no, racism is bad. It's stupid. And I would also ask her, hey, what are your thoughts on anti-discrimination laws? Because the libertarian answer is no anti-discrimination laws.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the main difference. Mises Caucus, they're principal libertarians. LP National, they're not.
Okay. No, it's good because I always see them hit like there's that. And dude, I had unfollowed, I said libertarian Twitter because it was so bad. Their takes were such garbage. I like couldn't even. Oh my god, it was brutal. But so where can everyone find you and all those things like that?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm just Drew Hancock, which is at Lockout Days, LOCKOUTDAYS. YouTube, same thing. My name is Drew Hancock, but the URL is Lockout Days. And then you can find me on Odyssey as well, ODYSE.com, and use that website just for everything. Abandon YouTube entirely. After this show moves to Odyssey, stop watching it here. Just watch the Odyssey versions.
Dude, awesome.
But yeah, that's all I got.
Well, dude, thanks so much for being on the show. Here, I'll